Okay, my husband's working from home, so I'm telling him he cannot bang around.
My husband works. Well, everybody's working from home. I promised my guest that I would read from her LinkedIn bio before the show. And I thought, oh, that's going to just be easy peasy. Until now, I'm trying to do that. Hey, everyone. I'm Wendy Cooper. I'm the host of The Wendy Cooper Show, conversations with remarkable people over 50. And today I do have someone who is quite remarkable. Her name is Jann Freed. She is a PhD. She is a leadership development and change management consultant with the Genesis Group, okay? But then the next sentence gets me super tongue-tied. Watch this. Let me see if I can get through this without screwing it up. She assists organizations and individuals in making purposeful change. I did it. Jann does this by facilitating vision-based strategic planning and executive coaching. These are words that my mouth just does not want to form. Okay, I'm really sorry. I've tried to read this over and over and over again. So I thought I would be lighthearted. Here's what we talked about. I took the pleasure of editing this show so that it's more concise for you. It's about 30 minutes. It's mostly Jann. It's kind of me coming in and talking to you and setting things up every once in a while. But the crux of it is we basically are talking about leadership, and we're talking about her life and her passion of photography. And we are also talking about what do we do with our lives when we get to a certain age, and why is that important, and why is it so pressing, and what has purpose got to do with everything, and does it have anything to do with anything, and where does leadership come in? Oh, and then I throw in a couple of other things also. But you know, Jann is the author of Leading with Wisdom, Sage Advice from 100 Experts. It is available on Amazon, and you can find her at Jann Freed, that is 2 N's and 2 E's.com. So without further ado, we're going to jump right in on me asking Jann, who the heck is she? Let's tell the audience. Anyway, thanks for listening, everyone. I'll be back in just a little bit.
I come out of higher education. So my first career was teaching undergraduate in a small private liberal arts college, teaching business management leadership, some marketing, but mainly business management. And I tell people I only did that for 30 years. So after 30 years, and we have 3 grown sons now, when they were seniors in college, they were twins, and when the last ones were seniors in college, my husband and I decided, 30 years, long enough. I loved it, or I wouldn't have kept doing it, but I had to drive an hour each way to get to the small college. And I'm in Iowa, and we don't live in Iowa because of traffic jams. And, I was driving literally 100 miles a day. So we both said, we can afford to take a risk. And I had been doing leadership workshops on the side, but not full time. And I thought, I want to leave while I'm young enough to do something else. So I left at 55 to start my own business. And I actually am part of a leadership development firm that's out of California called the Genesis Group. But I'm really self-employed. I'm a contractor for them and use their materials. But I really wanted to, I just had this passion to help baby boomers figure out what to do with the rest of their life. So second half of life, I went through training to be certified as a saging leader. Saging is SAGE-ING through an organization called Saging International. And their website is saging, SAGE-ING.org. And I'm just passionate about this whole, what to do after someone leaves their main career.
There's like this tribe out there, okay? And the tribe is very obvious once you're in the tribe that it exists. And it is this tribe of people just like me who are trying to help people just like you who are over a certain age and seeking their transformation into this new place in life that they're having a hard time understanding and then figuring out what to do with it. Some people call it reinvention. Some people call it saging, I suppose. But here's what she says.
Well, I think it's a big topic because we are living longer. But in the saging world, our guru is Rabbi Dr. Shalomi, and he wrote the book From Aging to Saging. And he used to say, are we really living longer, or are we just taking longer to die? And so, we really have 30 years of life extension.
For the past year or 2 years, I've often asked my guests, where do you think it comes from? Why is there all of a sudden, all of these boomers out there and everybody's talking about how they're too young to be old, too old to be young, right? What causes that? Why do we look down on millennials? Why do people over 50 have a hard time finding a job? Why do we feel like we're looked at like we're older than we feel and we are? What's the disconnect? What is really happening? And why is it such a huge topic? And why is there this growing tribe? Because it seems as though there's a continuing fabric or thread that goes through this fabric of people who are talking about ageism, or they're talking about being over 50, or they're talking about, I'm not a boomer, or I am a boomer. I don't know what I am. What's my purpose? Where am I going? Why am I so freaking messed up? Well, here's an explanation, and I think it's a pretty good one. So sit back, take a listen.
We plan all of the other stages of our life. I often use the example that, you have to figure out where your kids are going to, there's a waiting list for daycare centers. There's a waiting list for preschool. You have to plan all these phases, and, you have to get good grades in high school in order to get into college. We plan all of these phases of life, but we don't plan what to do next. And the whole idea of retirement was created at a time when people didn't live to be 70. So, that whole idea of retirement and Social Security, it's really antiquated. So I think that's why people, it's like, in fact, just last week, we had two good friends who work in the same radiology lab, and they both are retiring, one last week and one this week. And after 40 years, they're both really, even though they're ready, they don't really know what to do. And, they're tired of parts of it, but the other parts they really don't want to let go of, but they feel it's best for the group. There's just not a lot of education and training that we get unless we seek it out. Now, you and I are seekers, so we're looking for that information, but a lot of people, they don't, and then they start drifting. And you've probably discovered this too, Wendy, in your work, that, people 50 plus, alcohol and drug abuse is high. The divorce rate is higher for people 50 plus. Depression is higher for people 50 plus. They feel lost. And they feel like, well, if I dump my wife, I'll feel better. Some people, research would say that golfing every day or sitting on a beach, it's good for a honeymoon type period, but it's not going to last. It's not going to be fulfilling in the long term.
It's a catch-22 because if you have a job, now, of course, with COVID and everything that's happening, everything is up in the air, but let's pretend it's a regular world. And I don't even know if that's cool to do. But if you're still working, the best thing to do is to start to plan, right? So the best thing to do, because it's a really tough road out there after a certain age to get any type of corporate job, unless, of course, you're networking and you know somebody and things like that progress. It does happen, but not typically, right? So I think the average is 3 to 5 years that you need to be able to kind of, let's say it, reinvent thyself. And I think Jann's got a few good little tidbits to add about that.
And so, and I say it takes really about 5 years. I encourage people, my clients, that while they are still working, to be exploring, because then you've got this paycheck. And because I think it really takes about 5 years to kind of figure it out, explore, discover, make contact. because you don't just automatically get asked to be on the boards you want to be on.
You know, sometimes these days I want to get out my pom-poms, as if I have pom-poms, but I want to get out my pom-poms and I want to be a big cheerleader. And I was asking Jann if she felt the same way I felt about the overuse of the word leadership. What did it mean to her? And why is it all of a sudden feeling like it is everywhere? Just everywhere. I mean, what does it really mean? Why is it such a buzzword? Why is everyone using it? Why is it so important? Why it is like the common vernacular for anything anyone is, they are in leadership, or empowerment, or even authenticity, right? It's like, why? What does it really, really mean? What does it mean to her? And she's a leadership expert, so who better to ask, right?
I like to drive it home, and I always say the most important person to lead is yourself. So that's why everyone needs to understand some aspect of leadership. But there's also a crisis in leadership. We're seeing a lack of leadership. And that's why I think it's really being emphasized now, because we're seeing, we're not seeing strong people at the top. Now, what I will say is, given what's going on with COVID, we are seeing some state governors really step up and lead and be strong leaders. But when there's a void, I think then we're seeing an emphasis, where are the leaders? And I actually have a keynote and a workshop the title is, Why Do Good Leaders Go Bad? And so I kind of talk about that. But so I think that would help explain why you're noticing the emphasis on leadership is because there's a leadership void.
Isn't that remarkable? Everyone is a leader. Everyone is in leadership because they feel as though there's a need for it. Not because they are leaders, but because they are seeking leadership, so they become the leader. Wow. But that's how I understand it. Interesting. So we shift gears here a little bit. And I asked Jann about her passion for photography. On her website, there are these beautiful black and white photographs. And I love them. And they are all taken by Jann, except for the ones of her. And it's funny because as a creative, I love the process of the visual that then I put with the story. So if I find a photograph or I see a photograph or I take a photograph that really gives me a visceral reaction, I can easily tell a story behind that. So it was wonderful to hear that it was kind of the same for Jann.
Yeah, all the photographs except for the ones of me, those were professionally taken by somebody else. But yeah, any other photograph on my website. And I would also say I have a blog, and I blog both on Medium, and I have a personal blog that people can subscribe to on my website. All of those photographs are my photographs also. I actually have a dark room in my house, but that's time consuming. So I'm working on another book, and so I really haven't done much of that. But no, photography is my love, and I kind of see the world through images, and I actually prefer black and white photography. So most of the images that you'll see on my website are black and white. Now on my blog, I go back and forth. It keeps me, it's kind of interesting because I go back and forth between if I'm too worried about taking photos, am I missing the present moment? And on the other hand, when I'm really thinking about photographs, I'm really in the moment. So I go back and forth.
So photography is Jann's passion. What is her purpose, right? What is your purpose? What's my purpose? Do our purposes change over time? Is our purpose when we're in our 20s and 30s and 40s different than it is when we start to get into our 60s and our 70s? I believe our purposes are always changing. We don't have one purpose. So I asked Jann, what is it? What is it about seeking a purpose? Why is that important? Why does that matter? Why is that defining who we are and how we spend the rest of our life? And will our purpose change from today to 5 years from now to 10 years from now? So if it is, and it does, what does it matter? That's kind of my take on it, right? Not everybody has their opinions, and especially coming from a world of education and corporate-facing people, I think the point of view can be a little bit different than from mine, which is more from the creative side of things.
I have a tagline that I often use in workshops. I say, if we are what we do and we don't do it anymore, then who are we? So we often identify so much with what we do. When you lose your platform, you lose your identity. That's when I think, a lot of people feel like they don't have a purpose. I think, again, purpose, it could be a small P. It doesn't mean you're setting the world on fire. It doesn't mean you're the next, Mother Teresa or something. So it could be a small P or a big P. But I do think that, one of my role models in this work is Richard Leiter. And Richard says, well, what's your reason for getting up in the morning? And I remember I was working with a coaching client, and it was a pretty high-powered lawyer in town. He just had been diagnosed with an illness that's going to progressively get worse. And so he was recommended to me, or someone recommended me to him, I guess. He sought me out. And in the process, I'm asking him these questions. And he said to me, well, you don't get it. I am, I'm ill. I'm not going to be working. And you just describe you keep describing work. And I said, no, you're misunderstanding. I said, my definition of work is your contribution to the world. I said, you're still going to be alive. What do you want to be giving back? What do you want to be contributing? And I said, what's your reason for getting up in the morning? And he just looked at me and said, oh, well, I never even looked at life like that,
Well, that's pretty easy. So far, it's really about having something to get out of bed for in the morning, meaning some type of passion mixed with a purpose. And perhaps from there, it grows to be your legacy. What's a legacy? Here's Jann.
I think, to me, I call legacy forward thinking. So, we often think of it as, what are we leaving behind? And I look at it as, how are we living? How we're living today, how we want to be remembered, which is forward thinking, influences what we're leaving behind.
I like that. I like that. I like the word legacy, number one. Number two, I think we all want to leave a legacy, right? It's our legacy. We go off and do our purpose so that we can leave our legacy. But at the end of the day, let's be real. We all do want to leave a legacy. So Jann's point really is, and I agree with her totally, and I'm sure that you do, is that think about what that legacy is that you want to leave and then work towards it as your purpose. Oh my goodness, we just found a formula for finding your purpose. That's what we call our organic thinking.
I've been teaching these concepts to undergraduates for years. And the earlier someone understands this, the better off they are. So that's what I call Breadcrumb Legacy, so that we are leaving crumbs all the time at every age, every stage, and they add up. Now, what's interesting is they accumulate and we're leaving them all the time, but it's so interesting because in some cases it feels like they can just be gone overnight. So it's that kind of falling from grace, whether we're talking about Charlie Rose, or we're talking about Matt Lauer, or even Elizabeth Holmes. It can be gone overnight, even though, it might take a lifetime to accumulate. So that's why I think every breadcrumb's important.
It's true. It can take years to accumulate your wealth and your stuff that you carry around with you, or you can accumulate it very quickly and then lose it, and then you can accumulate it again and then lose it or not sustain it. It happens. It's happened to me, I don't know. I can't count how many times it's happened to me in my life, but I always got back up on my feet and I dusted my breadcrumbs off and I moved forward, Single mom, 2 kids, you name it. I did it. Move on. Let's go. Chug, chug. So I thought we would talk a little bit about Jann's book, and it's available on Amazon. It is called Leading with Wisdom, Sage Advice from 100 Experts.
And I interviewed actually more than 100, but my editor liked 100. And what's interesting, Wendy, is I analyzed the data, interviewed all these people, analyzed the data, and there were major themes that emerged. And each theme then became a chapter in the book. And I think the book is almost timeless because it's not what I think, but it's what I learned from interviewing all of these people. And the book came out in 2013, published by Association for Training and Development. And the book, my driving question, I had basically 5 questions, but the main question was, given what you know about leadership, how can I best prepare people to be the kinds of leaders needed in these uncertain times? And the times have only become more uncertain. And so I think it's timeless. And each chapter, I have a chapter on compassion and empathy. I have a chapter on leaders don't let ego win. I have a chapter on creating healthy environments. All of this is just even more important now than when I wrote it. And so I'm very proud of the book.
Actually, I would be very excited to read it. So if you want to buy Jann's book, make sure to go to Amazon and purchase it there. And then you can also check out Jann at jannfreed.com. It is JANNFREED. Her email is the same, jannfreed at jannfreed.com. You can follow her also on Twitter, and her handle is, guess what? Jann Freed. Let's see. What else? Everything is Jann Freed. She's like me. Everything for me is Wendy Cooper. My company is C-Spot Run, but it doesn't matter. You can go to wendycooper.com. You're going to find the company there. So same thing with Jann. And I hope you do check out, especially checking out her photography is really, really beautiful on her website. I love how she designed that. So we're getting ready to wind the show down or up, and I have one more question for Jann. And I kind of always ask this question because it puzzles me a little bit. The word reinvention, what does it really mean, and what does it mean to someone who's 40 now because of COVID, and what does it mean to someone who is 60? I can see how reinvention means taking something, let's say an invention, and iterating it, right? So you have an invention and you, let's say you're 40 years old, you've lost your job, you're working from home, or maybe you haven't lost your job, but now you're working from home and you have to do the same job, but you have to do that from home. For me, that's reinvention, right? You're taking something that's invented and you're iterating it. So you're reinventing how that same thing is done. I don't think that that's really what it means to reinvent yourself after a certain age. I think reinventing yourself after a certain age would mean that you are doing exactly the same thing that you always did, but you were putting a new spin on it. And I don't really think that that's what people are talking about. Reinvent yourself as a boomer. Reinvent yourself over 60. Reinvent yourself. Reinvent yourself. Reinvent yourself. Ugh. So I asked Jann, because I wanted her take on what she felt the word reinvention actually meant. And I've heard it from other people, same thing. So I guess maybe I just am looking at it from a weird lens.
I tend to use the word rechannel or reframe. What is it we like doing and how might we, or some people are talking about rewire, don't retire, rewire. The whole idea is, what is it we like doing? What skills did we like using? And where else might we channel them? And so I agree with you. We're not really reinventing, but refocusing, rechanneling, reframing what it is we like to do and where else might we do that. And so, for instance, I was a professor for 30 years and then I taught a graduate course for another 10 years. So, I like teaching, which is why I like workshops. But now I'm thinking more online learning because that's where the world is kind of going. Yeah. So I'm still teaching, I'm still sharing what I'm learning, but I'm just doing it in a different framework, different platform. So
here's the bottom line. Everybody has to shift what they're doing. Everyone, every single person, except for, of course, the essential workers that are breaking their backs for us. But to stay on this topic, and this topic basically is, after a certain age, how do you get through this difficult time? Barbara Warren, my guest from my last episode, she calls it middlescence, kind of similar to adolescence. How do you reframe and find your purpose, which then creates your legacy? Or how do you reframe your life to frame your legacy, which then creates your purpose? It's kind of interesting to think about. Well, that just about does it for another episode of The Wendy Cooper Show, conversations with remarkable people over 50. I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank Tom Orsi of Orsi Digital Post for all his help and his wonderful theme music that he does for me and everything else he does for me also. If you like what you hear, us podcasters, we only get accolades from our listeners, and that really counts a lot. So please like, star, share, listen to this 1,000 times, wherever you get your podcast. I also have another daily podcast, which is under 5 minutes every day. It's called Speaking of Age Daily with me, Wendy Cooper. And it's real raw and refreshing kind of tidbits that I just talk about whatever every day, except for Saturday and Sunday. Anyway, until next time, thank you very much for listening. And you can learn more about me at wendycooper.com.